In John 14:15, Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." Obedience is a clear part of loving God. We love God by keeping his commandments. So, if you don't know, I'm doing a series about how to love God and love others. Right now, I'm focusing on how to love God. This is based off of the two great commandments Jesus gives in Matthew 22:37 through 40, to love God and love others, basically. First, we're going into how to love God. And so today, I'm going to be talking about how to love God through obedience, and I'm specifically going to focus on the first 4 of the 10 commandments, because what's a cool thing about the 10 commandments is that they're actually broken up into 2 groups that actually, those 2 groups fall into the 2 commandments that I just said that Jesus gave in Matthew 22:37 through 40. The first 4 fall into how to love God. The last 6 fall into how to love others, how to love your neighbor as yourself. And so today I figured I'll kind of look into these 4 commandments, kind of expand on them, because they really are at the core the expansion of how to love God. I think that's really what they're designed to be. And so in my previous 2 videos, I kind of looked at prayer, how to love God through having a relationship with him through prayer. Because again, in any relationship, you have to talk to the person you're in a relationship with. And so an important piece of a relationship with God is talking to him through prayer. And so I went through the New Testament, Gospels and Epistles, looking at every single instance of prayer in them. And so I will add to that this channel called Above Reproach, which actually that's where this shirt comes from, the merch from that channel. Above Reproach, that channel's doing a series now on prayer. They, I think, only just have 1 episode out currently. But in the first episode, he gave a really good definition of prayer. So I'll just say that now. Talking to God with intention and purpose as his beloved child and according to his word. So I think that really just sums up prayer so perfectly. Talking to God with intention and purpose as his beloved child and according to his word. Again, this is a great definition. You want to have a reason, a purpose, and intention when you're coming to God in prayer. Something that you're praying for, something that you're wanting to bring to him in prayer. And you also want to come to him knowing who you are, knowing that you're a child of God, that he's graciously, beautifully allowed you to be able to come to him in prayer as the way to talk to him. And you don't have to come fearfully. You should come with a certain reverence for God, recognizing who God is, but also recognize who he says you are. That you're his child and that you're free to come to him with a certain confidence. So I think that's beautiful, and also according to his word. You don't want to, come to him praying for things that go against his word, against his will. You want to submit to his will and obey his word when you're coming to him in prayer. So I think it's perfect. Perfect definition of prayer. So I would definitely kind of add that to my discussion of prayer that I had in my 2 videos. But today I'm going to be going through the first 4 of the 10 commandments and talking about how they show us different ways. These aren't the only ways, but they're 4 key ways to love God through obeying his commandments. There are 4 commandments that we can love God through obeying. Another way of saying that. But first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. No other gods before God. Don't worship any other deities, but the one true God. He's the true creator of the universe, and we need to treat him as such. Worship him as such, and don't give any other beings, whether real or fictional, that credit. And I think another key part of this, the part that says no other gods before me, that's, I think, while of course it's not saying that there actually exists other gods that, we would put before God, or even below him for that matter. He's the only God. But I think what it's saying is that God should be first priority in our life. There should be nothing that comes below, nothing goes above him. Everything goes below him. He should not go below anything in our life. He should be top priority. So no other God should be placed above him. And the second commandment will go further into this. I think that these first two commandments, one way I think to summarize them both is to say God comes first. So I guess I'll talk about the second commandment now, which says, you shall not make for yourselves an image in the form of anything in heaven above, earth beneath, or waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love and keep my commandments. So, I'll just mention at the end there, it talks about people who love and keep his commandments. So that goes back to what I said at the beginning of the video with John 14:15, saying with Jesus saying, if you love him, you will keep his commandments. Once again, God also says here, if you love him, you'll keep his commandments. That's a key piece of loving him, obeying him. This commandment seems very similar to the first one, and sometimes it's hard to try to see where the difference is, and that's because there's a lot of overlap with it. Often, there are idols made of the false deities, false gods that we worship, that people will worship. Often, idols will be made to represent them. But I think the difference that this is pointing out is that it's not exclusive to just deities, false deities. It also can apply to created beings in the heavens above, earth beneath, waters below, talking about worshiping creation rather than the creator. So I think this would bring in pantheism into this idea here. People who worship nature, people who worship things in creation rather than, again, the creator of the universe, the true creator of the universe. And so I think while these first two commandments seem very similar, the key difference is that I think they're not mutually exclusive. Often they go hand in hand. Often you're making an idol of a false deity. But I think not every false god, false deity, you will make an idol of, and not, physical idol of. And also, not everything that you make a idol from is going to be a deity. Sometimes it'll just be worshiping something in creation as if it had some divine power, but not necessarily as specifically a deity or creator of the universe. So I'd say I think that's where the difference lies. But again, as I just said, I think the biggest takeaway from these first two commandments is to put God at number one in your life. Nothing goes above him. Everything goes below him. He's number one, first priority above all else. And that brings us to the third commandment. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. So I think in today's world, the modern world, we see this in using God's name as a curse word. Going, Jesus Christ, oh my God. And saying it in such a way that you don't actually mean you don't actually mean it. You're not actually calling out to him. I think as Christians, there is a certain context where it would be okay to say, "Oh my God," if we're actually saying, "Oh my God," we're actually calling out to God. It's like, God, oh my God, what is going on here? God, help us, please. Like, if you're actually calling out to him, then it's perfectly fine to say, "Oh my God." But if you're just throwing it out there, not really meaning it, I think that's where it's kind of iffy. Now, I'll also say, though, I don't think this is exactly what this commandment is going for, at least not at the time it was written. I would say my view of this is that it's more looking towards, like, being a false prophet, saying the Lord is saying something that he never actually said, saying God wants something he never actually said that he wants, acting like you have some divine authority that God's given you that in reality he has not given to you. Basically just giving false testimony about God. I think that's really a lot of what this commandment is kind of trying to kind of point towards as like a thing you should not do. You should not speak false testimony about God. Don't misuse the name of God to promote something that he's against, that he's clearly against. I think we see this a lot today in maybe progressive Christianity, maybe in prosperity gospel a bit, using the Lord's name to promote ideologies that he's very much against, very much is not biblical. So I would say that's probably what this is pointing more towards, is just being a false prophet, a false teacher, saying God said something, wants something, does something that is not actually true, giving false testimony about God. I think is giving false testimony about God. I think that's the best way to kind of describe this. Part of loving God is speaking the truth about him and letting him speak for himself through his word. Definitely. I think there's, I think his word is not, the Bible is not the only way he'll speak to us. There's definitely times the Holy Spirit will speak to us, personally, but we can know for certain what's in the Bible is what he said. And so if we have any doubts about about things he's telling us, we go to his word that we know for certain is his word, the Bible, and we can get some clarity on stuff. So basically, what this commandment, I think, encapsulates in its entirety is don't give false testimony about God, only speak truth about him, and let him speak for himself through his word. And then that brings us to the fourth commandment here, which is about the Sabbath. And so I did not expect me to have so many notes about the Sabbath, but I actually wrote down a lot of stuff about this one. So this will probably be the biggest chunk of the video will be about the Sabbath. Didn't intend it to be, but it ended up being that way. So, the Sabbath. Basically, here, I'll just read. I've read the actual verses where the Ten Commandments are from Exodus 20, so I'll do that for this one too. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigners residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. So, what is the point here? What is this saying? Basically, at the core, what it's saying is that we need to have a day of rest and dedication to the Lord. Now, Jewish culture has, I think, blown this way out of proportion To the point where I can't imagine it can be anything more than stressful rather than restful. Honestly, like, there's so much like legalism with it where it's like what you can and can't do, and you can do this under these circumstances and that under these circumstances. I mean, that's probably that's the whole problem with the way um the law just has kind of developed over time. Um, it's kind of become more about finding the loopholes and the specific wording of things to, you know, make certain things okay, figure out the exact way you should be doing things, rather than just obeying God, serving Him, and seeing the purpose of these commandments, rather than trying to maybe find some like loopholes to them. I think that's the big problem Jewish culture has run into, and why Jesus had to come and free us from the law. Even in Mark 2:23, it says, "One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to them, 'Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?'" So right there you see, like, they're focused more on things being lawful, on the legalistic elements of the Sabbath, rather than just the point of it, which is a day of rest. We look further, Jesus talks about, have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? Basically just, talking about how, he had to eat food that was supposed to only be for the high priests. And so, basically, after it all, he says, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." So, the Sabbath was made for man. The Sabbath was made for us to enjoy, for us to have a day of rest after a whole week of work. So, Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath, and the Sabbath, He made the Sabbath for man, not man for the Sabbath. We're meant to use it for our benefit, not as a kind of, thing we're locked into, and we're trying to like, I have to kind of work in the box that the Sabbath is put on me. It's like, it's made for you to rest from your work, not work for your rest. Also, in the Christian sphere, there's also a bit of debate about the day of the Sabbath. It says in the Ten Commandments in Exodus 20, the seventh day, seventh day of the week, 6 days of work, seventh day is the Sabbath. Well, the seventh day of the week would be Saturday. But most churches meet on Sunday. So are we kind of breaking God's command by doing the Sabbath on the wrong day? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because my perspective on this is that through Jesus, we've been freed from the law and any of the specific legalistic elements of the law, including the days that we must do certain things on. So, I mean, even in, let's see, Galatians 4:10, Paul is, first to the Galatians, he's saying that, he basically calls them out for honoring or celebrating specific days, months, years as holy. Saying we're free from that. We're free from that bondage. We no longer have to look to certain days, months, years as holy. We're free every day. Every day can be holy, actually. Every day, in fact, I'll talk about this in a second. Every day can kind of be the Sabbath, in fact. But the point I'm trying to make, I guess, right now is that it doesn't really matter when the Sabbath is. I think it doesn't even really matter if we have a Sabbath. It's just a thing that's good for us to have. It's just a thing that's good for us to have. We should have a Sabbath. We should observe a Sabbath, day of rest. We're not locked into a specific day it must be. And we've just made it Sunday now, because Sunday was the day Jesus rose from the dead. So actually, in fact, Sunday seems fitting to be the day of rest, since it is the day Jesus rose from the dead. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. It's just Sunday now, and I don't think we're breaking the commandment by doing it on the wrong day. And I just said a second ago, we can in fact have every day be the Sabbath. In fact, the rest that Jesus gives us makes that possible, where we can actually, I think, have the Sabbath at all times. I think any time we spend with God can be considered Sabbath. Any time that we take a break and say, all right, I'm going to press pause and let this moment be between me and God, I think that can be Sabbath. But while that is true, I do also think it's important for us to have a specific day that is Sabbath. That is the day of rest, where we say, okay, no work today. Today is just rest, and today is just for the Lord. I think that's a very important thing for us to have. I think it's for the human body. I think God made us to need rest time, to need breaks, to not just be constantly working ourselves. He made us to require rest. And so that's something that we just need. That's something we just need. We need a time of rest and a specific day where that rest occurs. I think that's a very, very good thing for us to have. Not a requirement, but beneficial. Beneficial. That's kind of, I think a lot of Christian stuff is not necessarily, should be considered not requirement, but beneficial. In fact, even in 1 Corinthians 10:23, Paul is kind of calling out the Corinthians for going, all things are lawful, all things are lawful, but he says, but not everything is beneficial, not everything builds you up. And so that's kind of the thing here, is like, it's kind of I think, the tagline of Christianity is, it's like, all things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial. So you're free to do all things. You've been freed through Christ. Now it's time to look for what's actually beneficial for you to do. Not as a requirement to get into heaven, but because it's a good thing to do. God says this is a good thing to do, so you should do it. That's pretty much the, I think, whole premise of Christianity. But yeah, it's good to have the Sabbath. It doesn't really matter what day, but there should be a Sabbath. And we've made it Sunday church, so we do it on Sunday now. We consider Sunday the Sabbath, and I think that's perfectly fine. Now you might say, well, it says seventh day. It says seventh day. Why does it get specific if we're not supposed to do it? Well, I would say to that, one, again, things aren't requirements anymore. Also, we're free from the law, and also this was specifically for Israel. I think this was a specific commandment, at least the part about the seventh day was specifically for Israel. And I think it was more to kind of nudge them along, give them a starting point, as, to try to figure out this, like, revolutionary thing of, like, a Sabbath day. It was kind of revolutionary at the time, a day of rest. I think that wasn't really a thing prior to this, and so we kind of had to figure out, well, how does this work? What day do we have the Sabbath? I think also, it's hard to, with any group of people to get them agree on things. It seems like if you look at the Israelites, then it would have been even just very, very difficult if it was up to them to agree collectively on a day for the Sabbath. I don't think that would have went well. So I think it was for the best that God goes, this is the day. You're doing it on this day, guys. Keep this day holy. This is it. Seventh day. That's what you're doing. Probably for the best. I think also it goes along with God creating the world in 6 days and resting on the seventh. That's definitely one possible. I mean, it's obviously a clear meaning to it. He says it right in the right in the commandment there. He says, well, as I made the world in 6 days. On the seventh day I rested. You guys will work for 6 days and rest on the seventh day. So I think that's a big reason why he gave that seventh day as the days, because that's how he created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Now, my theory brain, has come up with something, and I actually looked this up. So, I think there's a bigger meaning to this idea of 6 days of work, seventh day of rest, that I think ties into the millennial reign. So I think the millennial reign is the seventh day, right? And what I think, so first way this might play out is young Earth creationists believe that the Bible says the Earth is around 6,000 years old, and so possibly now I think it says. See, I don't know if young creationism. I think it says it's approximately 6,000, but I don't know if it's going for more over 6,000 or under 6,000. But if we're under, then it could be at the point where Earth is 6,000 years old. The seventh day begins, and the seventh day is the millennial reign. This theory is called the millennial day theory. Basically, this is going off of, I think, in 1 Peter, where he says that to the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and we're taking that very literally to mean 1,000 years corresponds to a day in the 6 days. And so we have 6 days of work, seventh day of rest, the millennial reign. A day is like 1,000 years. The millennial reign is the seventh day, the day of rest. So that's a possible idea. And it could go into young creationism, where when the Earth is 6,000 years old, then the seventh day starts. And therefore, I guess 7 years before that happens, the tribulation will have to start. So, of course, that's just going off of the age of the Earth, and it requires young Earth creationism to be true. I believe it does. Just because I haven't seen enough evidence to not believe that. It seems clear the Bible says that. So that's what I believe. I believe young Earth. But certainly I could see how old Earth could possibly fit also. So I'm not saying old Earth is possible. I just think the Bible teaches young Earth, so I believe that. I could definitely be swayed to believe old Earth, but as of now, I think the Bible teaches young Earth, and the idea that when Earth is 6,000 years old, the seventh day starts, requires young Earth to be true. But if you look at the Hebrew calendar, right now the current year is 5783, which means we are 217 years away from the year 6000 on the Hebrew calendar. So, my theory is that we're going off of the Hebrew calendar, and that the year 6000 in the Hebrew calendar is when the millennial reign is going to start. Because it makes so much sense to me. Because, right, he gives this command to the Jewish people of the seventh day of rest. And so it makes sense if we're going off of the Hebrew calendar for this concept of the millennial day, the millennial reign being the seventh day. So that's my theory here. I think that would be so cool, and so that would put the millennial reign as starting in the year 2240. So it means it's not going to happen in our lifetime, which is a little bit sad, but it's fine. We get to, if that's the case, we get to live our full lives here on Earth, die like everybody else has, not get raptured. I believe in rapture, so a little bit sad. Not going to happen in our lifetime if this is the case, but I don't know. I think, of course, all kind of end times, views I have, I hold very loosely. I think everybody should kind of hold their end times views a bit loosely, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. He's given us the book of Revelation and a bunch of prophecies in the Old Testament and New Testament. He's given us a bunch of prophecies about the end times, a lot of which is in the book of Revelation. But there's a lot of debate about what it means, how to actually interpret the book of Revelation, how to exactly interpret all these prophecies. And we could be wrong about them, and it could be something totally different. Even look at his first coming. Jesus' first coming, Jewish people, I think, had a very different view of what the prophecies for him, of him meant, and what actually occurred. Of course, in hindsight, we're able to look back and be like, of course, that's what that was talking about. But to them, they could not see it. And it might be the same thing. Like, we might even be actually blinded from seeing exactly what's supposed to happen. So, with all end times views, I kind of hold them a bit loosely, knowing that whatever happens, God's in control of it. God has a beautiful plan, no matter what happens. That's the view I hold. No matter what happens, no, that's the only part of my view that I hold very, very firmly, is that God has something great planned. It's going to be beautiful when he comes back. However this plays out, it's going to be beautiful, and we get to spend eternity with him. That's the surefire thing that we know is going to happen, whether premillennialism, postmillennialism, rapture, pre-tribulation rapture, post-tribulation rapture, whatever. We know that we get to spend eternity with him at the end of it all. So that's beautiful, and I get to look forward to that no matter what happens. So that's the part I hold firmly. Other things, I'm pretty sure the Bible teaches this stuff, but I could, of course, be wrong. So I hold them very loosely. But I think this millennial day theory is very interesting at the very least, and it would be really cool if this is actually how this plays out. I think, again, the idea of the millennial reign being the seventh day just works so perfectly, but again, I hold it loosely. It could be wrong. It could work out a different way. But that's my little end times theory brain going on. But basically, the entire point is that we should have a day of rest dedicated to the Lord. That's the whole point of this command about the Sabbath. We should have a day of rest dedicated to the Lord. And I mean, it makes sense. In any relationship, you should set aside one-on-one time with that person. So that's kind of what the Sabbath gives us with our relationship with God. A time for us to set aside to be for God and for us to spend time with him, with no other distractions of what other things going on in the world. With our lives, with our work. We could say, all right, I'm setting everything aside. This is for you, God. This is me and you now. Which I think is really, really cool, really beautiful. So that is going through the first 4 commandments of the 10 commandments, about loving God, specifically the 4 ways, the 4 commands, first 4 commands of the 10 commandments say we should love God. There's definitely more ways for us to love God, but these are, I think, the very core ways for us to love God. And I think even as we expand different ways to love God, I think they, similarly to how these commandments fit into the main 2 commandments, I think other ways to love God fit into these commandments. In fact, strangely enough, I think even the main 2 commandments he gives also fit into just the first one, to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, because I think loving your neighbor as yourself is just another way to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So basically the only commandment you need to do is love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Obviously there's more, as we're unpacking this, more ways to get specific about what that actually means, but I think that is the core of what we're made to do, is to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Everything should be an outflow of that. Even loving our neighbor as ourselves should be an outflow of that. So anyway, that is my look into the first 4 commandments of the 10 commandments. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope this taught you a bit more about how to love God, how to cultivate maybe a better relationship with God. I think these are the very basic 4 things of how we're supposed to love God. And so get these down, and you're on a, you have a good, strong foundation with your relationship with God. So definitely hope you enjoyed this video. It's like my third time trying to end this thing. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you come back next time as I delve more into ways to love God, cultivate a relationship with God, and help you keep continuing to grow your inward man. Amen.